They called her the cleaning lady. No rank, no name, just a mop, gloves, and silence. Recruits mocked her. Officers ignored her. She swept their floors, scrubbed their brass, and disappeared into shadows until one night, a sniper instructor froze, not because of what she said, but how she walked, balanced, silent, deadly. The kind of stride you only learn in combat zones when one wrong step means you don't come home. What followed unraveled everything Fort Talon thought it knew, because ghosts don't carry ID tags, and this one had a past darker than any of them were cleared to see. Subscribe now, because some legacies refuse to stay buried. Fort Talon had a rhythm. Steel doors hissed open at 600. Boots hit the pavement in staggered cadence, and the smell of solvent, sweat, and gun oil clung to every surface like it was regulation. Operators cycled through rotations, instructors barked drills, and in the margins of all that controlled chaos, she moved gray jumpsuit, rubber gloves, pushing a mop bucket with one hand and a dustpan with the other. No one paid her much attention. She wasn't in uniform, didn't carry a sidearm. Her name tag was long gone, the Velcro square on her chest just a fuzzy patch of silence. The recruits called her the cleaning lady when they bothered to refer to her at all. A few got creative. Janet the janitor, Mop Mom, even Cinderella, like this was some bad middle school sitcom instead of one of the most selective tactical training facilities in the country. She never reacted, never flinched, just kept to her route. Bay 4, Admin West, the observation tower stairwells, then back to the mess hall maintenance wing. Her pace was steady, unhurried but purposeful, like someone fulfilling an obligation, not just logging hours. Some joked she was a base ghost. Nobody remembered her hiring date. She didn't eat in the mess, didn't park in the contractor lot, and wasn't on any of the schedule rotations. She just showed up every night at 1,800. Same uniform, same mop, same beat-up gray bucket that squeaked on left turns. The young ones laughed behind her back. The seasoned ones didn't even register her presence. She was background noise, just another low-clearance civvy making the place shine for the people who actually mattered. She didn't mind. There was a quiet dignity in the way she cleaned, like the floor deserved to be spotless, no matter who walked on it. She wiped down the firing benches like they were altars, scrubbed the brass collection bins until they reflected the overhead lights, even dusted the underside of observation windows, the places nobody noticed except, maybe, the snipers. But for now, she was just the cleaning lady, silent, invisible, overlooked, which was exactly how she wanted it. She came in with the dusk, just as the last of the trainees filed out and the fluorescent lights flickered to life across the facility. Fort Talon quieted in waves, first the shouting, then the scuff of boots, then finally the heavy echo of gear being stowed, and in that hush, she began. Same route, same rhythm, training, room alpha, armory floor, sniper tower stairwells, and back again. Her cart was organized with unnerving precision, supplies laid out by task, tools aligned by sequence. The mop head was always clean, the gloves fit perfectly. The broom was wrapped in electrical tape along the shaft, not for grip, but to deaden the sound when leaned against concrete. Every detail thought through, every motion efficient. She didn't listen to music, didn't hum, didn't even sigh. Just moved with mechanical certainty from one room to the next, wiping down counters, sweeping brass, scrubbing away the day's residue like it was a kind of ritual. Some thought she was slow because she didn't rush, but they weren't watching closely. Her work took half the time it took the daytime staff and left no streaks, no missed corners, no excuses. The senior staff didn't notice. Not really. They registered clean floors, stocked paper, and the absence of complaints. That was enough. In a place built on urgency, precision only mattered when it carried a rifle or wore rank. But someone was watching. Up in the far tower, Tower Savina lone figure lingered long past his assigned rotation. Chief Warrant Officer Declan Holt, sniper instructor, former field. He was the type who noticed things. Angles. Patterns. People pretending to be things they weren't. And as he leaned back in the darkened observation booth, sipping the burnt coffee from an old thermos, he watched the woman descend the access stairwell below. Most people took those stairs casually flat-footed, clumsy. She didn't. She shifted her weight low and forward, moving heel to toe, in quiet, deliberate rolls, balanced, economical, like someone trained to carry weight and avoid noise, like someone who'd learned to move in places where sound cost lives. Holt didn't say anything, not yet, but he did stop drinking his coffee, and he watched her go all the way to the bottom. Chief Warrant Officer Declan Holt didn't miss much. Not anymore. Not since they pulled him off the field and gave him a clipboard, a range schedule, and a pair of rookies who thought a 500-yard shot made them gods. Most days he played along, corrected their grip, calibrated their optics, taught them how to breathe without thinking about breathing. But he never forgot the other job. The one that taught him to see what wasn't obvious. Patterns, tells, shadows, that moved like they weren't supposed to. He kept to the towers most nights, preferred the silence, the wind, the distance between him and the noise of the compound below. From that high perch, everything slowed down, decisions got clearer, people got easier to read. That's where he was halfway through a clipboard review and a mug of stale coffee when he saw her again. It was late, the kind of hour where the base settled into its skeleton crew and the only things moving were janitorial carts and the occasional night-op unit cutting through the dark. He spotted her near the West Utility corridor. Gray jumpsuit, standard-issue mop, same as always. But something was different. She wasn't rushing, wasn't dawdling either, just moving. And the way she moved made the hair on his arms lift. It wasn't casual, wasn't careless. She moved like someone who knew exactly where her weight was distributed. Every step was smooth, controlled, balanced. Her head stayed level. Her shoulders didn't sway. Heel to toe, toe to arch, arch to roll. It was the kind of stride you only learned in dirt, with a pack, under fire. He leaned forward in his chair, eyes narrowing. For a second, he thought about grabbing his binoculars, then stopped himself. That would have made it feel official, like he was investigating something. He wasn't. Not yet. She reached the edge of the lamplight and passed into shadow. Gone. No hesitation, no glance over the shoulder, just vanished. Holt sat there for a while, unmoving, steam curling from his forgotten coffee. He stared at the spot where she'd been, like the concrete might offer up a second look. It didn't. He wrote nothing down, said nothing to anyone, just flipped to the next page on his clipboard. But the line between routine and anomaly had just shifted, and his instincts hadn't been wrong in a very long time. The morning came hard. Fog clung low over the hills behind Fort Talon, and the range smelled like brass, burnt lubricant, and stale caffeine. Holt hadn't slept. He rarely did after running a full rotation. 12 hours of overwatch drills, shifting wind vectors, and watching 20-year-olds convince themselves they were invincible. The last team had cycled out after 300. By the time Holt locked the tower and headed back to the range control booth, his legs felt like rebar and his eyes like gravel. He was expecting mess dust rings from rifle butts, half-drunk energy drinks, maybe a forgotten scope cap or two. Instead, he stepped into a booth that looked untouched. But not untouched in the usual way. Not, nobody's been here, clean. This was intentional. The observation glass normally smudged from fingers and cheek, was pristine, not just wiped, polished. The kind of clean that came from someone who understood optics. Someone who knew about glare angles, interior reflection, how the smallest film of oil could disrupt sightlines under pressure. Holt blinked at the glass, then stepped closer. It was flawless. His own reflection barely ghosted back at him. He crouched near the trash bin, where only a single item had been tossed. One folded paper towel, white but not ordinary. Creased down the middle like someone had wrapped something in it neatly, precisely. He picked it up without thinking, instinct kicking in before logic could catch up. It was heavier than expected, light residue of cleaning solvent, and embedded in the soft fold lines was a faint, geometric pattern barely there, but unmistakable to someone who knew what to look for. 4 lines, intersected in a jagged triangle. Off-center, like a fingerprint, but deliberate, not decorative, functional, familiar. Holt froze. He'd seen that shape before. Once, a decade ago. Southern Helmand, a cache site deep in red zone country, gear prepped by someone no one ever met. But the weapons worked better than spec, and the scopes were zeroed so tight you could feel the crosshair breathe. That same pattern had been etched, almost invisibly, on the inside of a bolt cover. He hadn't told anyone then. He didn't now. He set the towel down gently, looked once more at the glass. And for the first time in years, Declan Holt felt like he was being watched by someone who'd already done his job and done it better. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long sterile shadows down the range corridor. It was nearly 2,000, 200 late enough that the base had settled into its predictable nighttime rhythm. Recruits filed out of the simulation wing, laughing too loud, moving too fast. Overconfidence was easy to spot in rookies. It stuck to their boots like red clay, heavy and obvious. The cleaning lady was already there, mopping in long, slow arcs that respected the floor more than the men who walked it. Her gloves were worn thin at the knuckles. She worked in silence, as always. Head down, focused, unbothered, until the bottle dropped. A metallic clatter, followed by the sharp tang of CLP hitting concrete. A puddle spread fast across the floor, thick and slick, leaking from an uncapped bottle kicked loose from a recruit's gear bundle. He barely noticed, was too busy flexing the scope on his rifle, talking like he understood what long range meant. She didn't yell, didn't scold, just stepped forward with that same steady calm she wore like armor. One hand reached for the mop. The other lifted the rifle by its fore and gentle, unhurried. She cradled it like it was something living, kept it level as she knelt. Thumb brushed the bolt catch. Left hand twisted under the magwell. A fluid underhand motion, and click. Chamber open. Cleared. Then back to the spill, like nothing had happened. Holt saw it from the end of the hallway, mid-step, coffee in hand. The movement snagged in his periphery, not the rifle, not the cleanup, but how she did it. No hesitation, no uncertainty. A field strip gesture from someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Left-handed, underhanded, with the kind of casual expertise that couldn't be faked. Not just learned. Lived. The recruit didn't even notice what had happened. Still talking. Still gesturing. But Holt had stopped walking. He studied her hands. The way her fingers wrapped the grip with respect, not familiarity. Not like someone playing soldier, but like someone who knew what it meant when a weapon failed at the wrong moment. Her hands didn't shake. Not then, not after. Holt sipped his coffee and didn't say a word. But his instincts were talking now, loudly. The sniper prep room always smelled like sweat, solvent, and sharpened nerves. It was a space of calculation of milliradians, range cards, and weapon maintenance so meticulous it bordered on sacred. Precision lived here. So did ego. That morning, someone thought they were funny. Scrawled across the whiteboard above the locker bench was a rough, cartoona squat stick figure in a janitor's jumpsuit with mop in hand and glittery wings. Block letters underneath read, "Cleaning Fairy, patron saint of dust bunnies and floor buffs." Crude, juvenile. Worse, it had been there for hours. No one claimed it. Of course they didn't. Not allowed. It got a few quiet chuckles, a smirk or two, even a photograph someone would later swear they never took. The younger recruits treated it like locker room, graffiti, harmless, meaningless. Just something to kill the edge of another long day under tight scopes and tighter schedules. Then Holt walked in. He didn't speak. Didn't even blink. just stared at the board for a long breath. The room quieted the way it always did when someone realized the joke had gone too far. Holt walked over, picked up the eraser, and began wiping it down. Once vertical, once diagonal. Then he set the eraser back, cleaned the tray, and left without a word. By evening, nobody was laughing. The room settled into its after hours, hum rifles resting in racks, targets cooling outside, and the gentle scrape of brass being swept into buckets. She was there, same as always, cleaning methodically, quietly, alone. It wasn't until later that someone noticed the mark, near the end of the primary firing bench, etched lightly into the film of dust along the corner floor. Seemed just faint enough to be missed if you weren't looking, were 3 triangles, nested, perfectly symmetrical, interlocked like a puzzle that only made sense to a specific kind of mind. Holt saw it first. He froze mid-step. Not because it was graffiti, but because it was a signature. One he hadn't seen since Kandahar, since the op that officially never happened. The symbol wasn't in any manual. It didn't show up in any armory database or sniper course syllabus. It belonged to a handful of ghosts. Operators who came and went without names, leaving behind only clean kills and weapons that never misfired. And now one of them was mopping floors. Holt didn't say anything, but his silence carried weight. Holt waited until after midnight. That was when the network slowed, when the watchdog protocols went quiet, and when a man with the right credentials and the right instincts could find the cracks in the firewalls. He wasn't supposed to have access to Tier 3 archives anymore. Not since the desk job. Not since they pinned an instructor badge on his chest and told him to pass on his experience. But Holt had spent too many years in shadows to forget how to move through digital ones. The search started broad. No names, just incident dates, region tags, and cross-referenced equipment logs from Afghanistan, early 2000s. Nothing concrete. Just rumors and codeword files. Most of it dead ends-over redacted sitreps, corrupted attachments, no foreign headers slapped across entire pages like walls. But Holt had learned a long time ago that secrets weren't always hidden. Sometimes they were just misplaced. He found the photo buried in a logistics after-action summary, page 73 of an equipment loss report. It shouldn't have even had images, but there it was, grainy, low-res, probably taken from a drone or long-lens recon cam. 4 operators standing in front of a sand-colored Hilux, their faces blurred by heat shimmer. 3 of them were labeled by unit call sign. Alpha 2, Delta 3, Whiskey 6, all men. All accounted for. The 4th was a woman, smaller frame, low-slung rifle, bolt action with a long suppressor, and an old-school scope. Her posture was the thing. Relaxed, but not careless. Offhand resting loose over the stock, trigger finger curled but not tight. A professional stance. Muscle memory. And then, there were the boots, standard issue, but modified. Stitching redone at the seams. Soles worn in a very specific pattern, like someone who moved over uneven ground for a living. The left foot slightly angled, heel more scuffed than toe. Not from poor form, from tactical habit. Holt leaned closer to the screen. Then he froze. The walk, the stance, the tilt of her weight in that single still frame. It was her. The cleaning lady. He leaned back, slow, the chair creaking beneath him. One hand dragged down his face as the realization settled in like dust on cold steel. "What the hell were you, lady?" he whispered. And for once, there was no one around to answer. The mock urban range was a controlled nightmare, broken walls, burned-out cars, tight corridors with kill zones baked into every line of sight. Holt had spent 3 weeks designing the scenario. High stress, live fire, rogue shooter profile. Objective: eliminate the unknown before it eliminates you. The recruits were keyed up, sweating through their sleeves, fingers too tight on their triggers. Holt watched it all from Tower 4, 600 yards out, crosshair steadied on the center alley. The simulation was going according to plan, until it wasn't. He saw the movement out of the corner of his Scopia figure on a rooftop. Nobody had cleared yet. No one was supposed to be there. No role players, no observers. And this wasn't someone running. This wasn't panic. It was a walk. Low, controlled, center of mass tight and balanced. Not the shuffle of a civilian, not the swagger of a trainee. Holt tracked her. Gray jumpsuit, cleaning caddy slung like a pack. It was her. The cleaning lady. His thumb slid to the radio. All units hold. Abort simulation. Repeat, abort. Below, boots froze mid-stride. A door breach was canceled mid-kick. Rifles lowered. Tension snapped taut. Confusion blooming in their voices. But Holt didn't answer. He just kept watching through the scope. She reached the far edge of the rooftop and dropped to a knee behind a rusted HVAC vent. No hesitation. No scanning for threats. She knew she was alone up there. She popped open a discarded rifle case lying against the ventone of the simulation props, supposedly unloaded, unused. Holt watched as her hands worked with the precision of a surgeon. Barrel check. Chamber inspection. She rotated the bolt like she was testing the spin of a scalpel. Her left thumb paused on the trigger, group adjusted something with the tip of a fingernail and continued. Clean, fast, intentional. She wasn't just checking it, she was prepping it. Holt whispered, almost to himself, "That's not a janitor." No one responded. The radio was dead silent. He lowered the scope, sat back in his chair, and let the moment hang heavy in the air. Everyone had questions, but only he knew what they were really looking at. Not a mistake, not a breach, but a ghost that had come out of the shadow sand, hadn't forgotten how to move. It took Holt 3 days and 6 favors to get the name. Not the kind of request you push through official channels. Not at Fort Talon. Not when the face you're trying to match doesn't exist in any public archive, and the unit she moved like she trained with has been off the books for over a decade. But Holt had spent too long in the shadows to forget where the cracks were and who still answered when he knocked quietly. The answer came coded, buried in a string of deployment manifests with no signatures. Just one name, no rank, no designation, just a line item that shouldn't have survived the scrub. Vale, S. Task Force Elson. It hit like cold metal. Task Force Elson wasn't just quiet, it was erased. Black Group, Surgical Overwatch, a sniper forward support cell for ops that didn't officially happen. Syria, 2012. Final mission logged under redacted coordinates. 6-man element went in. No after action. No exfil footage. The only trace was a single transmission. All quiet. Lantern out. Then silence. Rumors said one made it out. Nobody ever confirmed who. Holt found her on Bay 4, sitting on an overturned bucket near the back wall, patching a hairline crack in the foundation. Same gloves, same boots. The mop was propped beside her like a prop that didn't matter anymore. He didn't speak right away. Just handed her the photo, the grainy one from the logistics report. 4 figures in heat haze. One of them, unnamed. The one with the scope and the long rifle and the boots that didn't lie. She looked at it for a long time. Not with surprise. Not with fear. Just memory. Her thumb traced the blur where her face would have been. Then she handed it back and said, quietly, "Only 3 of them made it out." That was it. No names, no unit rosters, no heroic summaries. Just that. And Holt, for all his questions, didn't ask which one she was. He didn't need to. By the end of the week, the jokes were gone. No more Cinderella. No cleaning fairy scribbles on whiteboards. The laughter dried up, and in its place came a silence that wasn't awkward. It was aware. Recruits moved aside when she passed now. Not out of fear, out of instinct. Like a ripple through the air when something important walks into the room, and nobody's sure why, only that you don't interrupt it. The stool showed up one morning beside her cart, heavy pine, worn at the edges. Burned into the wood across the seat was a single word, carved with the steady hand of someone who took their time. Veil. She didn't say anything when she saw it, just rested her hand on it for a moment, then got back to work. There were rifles now, lined up beside her bucket. Always carefully placed, not carelessly dumped, not requested. Just left. Trigger issues. Sight misalignments. Barrels that needed truing. No work orders, no instructions. Just quiet faith. Holt left the first one. An FN scar, heavy, that had been pulling right at range under stress. Others followed. DMRs, carbines, sidearms. She worked on them, without ceremony. No clipboard, no shop, just a pair of gloves, a tool roll, and the kind of stillness that made even seasoned operators lower their voices. Somewhere between the mop strokes and the bolt cam corrections, Fort Talon adjusted around her. Even the working dog, the Malinois that usually scanned every stranger like a potential threat, sat still when she passed. Didn't bark, didn't pace, just watched her like it remembered something older than commands. Someone murmured in the break room, "She's the reason some of us came home." It wasn't challenged. Holt saw her by the armory wall that afternoon, torquing a scope mount with surgical precision. He didn't interrupt, just nodded as he passed, like you would to someone who'd earned more than a salute. She never tried to reclaim rank, never corrected anyone when they called her ma'am. She still arrived on time, still mopped the same floors, still disappeared into the stairwell shadows at the end of her shift, because that's what she'd always done. She didn't need the spotlight. She was the standard.